So hi Boris, super excited to have you here today talking about AI in operational excellence for the well-architected framework. So the well-architected framework is a tool that's used by cloud architects around the world. It's been fairly standardized by now to help provide guidelines, provide best practices for the use of these technologies. But it's not just about picking the right technologies, it's also about managing the risks, identifying the trade-offs that need to be made. Specifically today, we're talking about operational excellence. Um, Operational excellence, it sometimes feels like it's already nailed down a bit. Is that something that's super exciting in this AI space right now?
It is. I think first we need to differentiate two things, right? Like the part of operational excellence where you run AI applications, and then you need operational excellence, and a lot of those patterns are being provided by WAF, right? And then there's also leveraging AI as part of operational excellence, and I think we're going to talk about the latter one. So I think AI actually adds a lot of value to operational excellence, which in my mind, and going back to your question, is pretty much the or one of the most important pillars, because a lot of customers I've talked to, a lot of companies, they don't think about day two,
Right.
right? It's like, hey, how do I build an application? Very easy. I have my checklist, go through it. But the real challenge for any type of application is day two, right?
Yep. Yep.
And even though you're using cloud services, it's not going to change it. It's not going to relieve you from your responsibility there. That's why I think AI adds a lot of value, or will add a lot of value to operational excellence in WAF. But with everything, take it with a grain of salt. Make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it does have some key topics in it, right? We're talking about observability. We're talking about deployment practices, troubleshooting. That's all in the realm of operational excellence. And when we talk about AI opportunities, obviously these are boundless. Everyone is introducing agents everywhere. We need AI everywhere.
Yes.
Does it matter?
MCP servers.
MCP servers. We need them all in there right now. So when we think specifically about the AI opportunity, in operational excellence, what kind of thing comes to mind? Just the sort of boundless fantasy about what does the future look like?
Well, I think if you think about where to start there, right? Because to your point, operational excellence is a broad topic. But I believe if you think about it, the key tenets of operational excellence, meaning being able to operate something very well, you need the data, right? And typically this falls under this big term observability. So I think in the observability space, there is a lot of opportunity for AI. We use this internally in our engineering. As you know, I'm part of our engineering organizations, and we leverage a lot of AI across the entire operation spectrum, but also across like troubleshooting or artifact generation. But I would say like the observability part is tremendously important.
Yeah.
Because think about, and I think we're going to touch a little bit on risks and trade-offs, right? As we all know, like large language models, and by that agents, are non-deterministic, right? So you're not always getting the same outcome. And it becomes actually really important to know what you're doing, especially if you depend entirely on those agents consuming your observability data.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that being said, we have a lot of patterns and practices, because we're also learning internally how to best use those tools that we are bringing into WAF as well.
Yeah. So we can put a number of opportunities we see on screen, and these are things that we came up with in conversations with customers, but also with internal SMEs about what you can do with AI. So we're talking about things like architecture simulations, automatic remediation of all sorts of production issues. That sounds wonderful, but I'm sure that at Microsoft that's super applicable because we run these large and complex systems, right? If I'm a smaller application team, if I'm an architect that's just getting started on operationalizing my application, the day two practices, where can I start? How can I make this tangible?
So I really think, first of all, you need to like standardize on a common schema where your signals are being, or the way your signals are being expressed, right? And if you think about like in general, OpenTelemetry has been tool of choice has been like the schema of choice for cloud native applications. And now OpenTelemetry feeds a lot into like AI. We have AI spans now. We add more features to OpenTelemetry to really cater to AI based systems, if you will. And from that perspective, I would say start with observability. Always start with observability, followed by evaluations if you have more than one, or as part of WAF, if you leverage more than one agent, right? And then put evaluations into it, and then security. I think those are the most important.
Yeah. So if we make it even more tangible, so what can we do now with AI in these scenarios in observability that we couldn't do 2 years ago?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question, right? Because so if you think about how we do things internally now, and I think that's a very good example. So before you had, with AI, you had pattern detection and traditional machine learning, right? So you could detect a pattern. What's happening now is it's basically a combination. So your application has certain criteria, so service level indicators that basically tell the system, hey, I'm doing well, right? So now if your system is about to fail because the service level indicators switch to yellow, you can actually use AI in multiple facets, because one very important aspect is AI can help you find a dependency graph. Because components or services usually don't fall in isolation. There's always an impact, right? Or most of the systems then have an impact. So you can actually use it to find a dependency graph. You can also use AI now to actually figure out, hey, this service is about to fail because the service level indicators, the signals are turning yellow, right? I need to dispatch a direct responsible individual right away to look at it. Then when it really push comes to shove, let's say that system says, hey, that's a P0, you really want to have a human in the loop, right? Before you dispatch everything, you stop things, you want to have some sort of validation. And I think this is where also some of the limitations are still there, even though we have AI as a judge and patterns, how we can work that. But I think especially when it comes to very critical things, to make sure that fix is not having an impact on other things, or a lot of compliance security things, right? Especially in the compliance area these days, you want to have a human in the loop there.
Right. So and you also need to identify those areas with the right criticality, with the right level of governance where you can fit this in. So are you saying that introducing AI here is not going to be an approach of move fast and break things, see where we end up?
Well, so it's a good discussion, because move fast and break things is actually a good pattern if you think about fail fast, if your system is set up the right way, right? So because if you think about traditional cloud architectures, we actually embrace a fail fast notion, right? Which basically means catch the error early. You need to think about the same pattern applicable to like if you leverage AI as part of your WAF, right? So you need to make sure that you know that where the boundaries are, right? And how to mitigate it. And that goes back to like what I said before, observability, evaluation, and is very key.
Yeah, so the key that you mentioned is making sure that your system is set up correctly with the right guardrails. And that means that in order to set that up correctly, you need to take the right risks and trade-offs into account. So when we talk about these risks, you mentioned earlier that AI is non-deterministic by nature. That can have a big impact on specific capabilities like summarization with correctness issues, the root cause analysis that have incorrectness issues. What kind of risks and what kind of trade-offs are you at Microsoft looking at?
So we are, I mean, there are risks, there are obvious risks as you highlighted, right? There are certain patterns that we leverage internally to trying to automate and minimize those risks. So I mentioned AI as a judge, right? So that you basically have another agent controlling the output of one agent. We also invest heavily into evals, just speaking about hallucinations and non-deterministic behavior. But then there's certain risks, I think, where we're headed, but where you still need to have a human in the loop, right? And that's usually in cases where you have to apply to certain regulations, right? Where you need to make sure that whatever you do there meets the needs of those regulations, governance, and so on and so forth. So I think it really comes down to finding the right balance there between risks. Again, as I said, there's trade-offs for a lot of those risks, but some of them are really human in the loop, for example, is a trade-off.
That's a good one. What about security and privacy considerations? Should we just give our AI tools broad access to anything they might need to come up with recommendations with remediations for issues?
That's excellent. I mean, I hate this answer because I'm in engineering, I'm not in consulting, but it really depends, right? It depends on where you sit, if you're building services, if you operate services, if you consume services on top of other services. So I think a general rule of thumb is give AI as much information as necessary in the security space, obviously adhering to security rules, boundaries, and things like that. But the more, the better. So if you're running a platform, if you're building a platform, for example, what you need to think about then is what is PII, right? What kind of data do I really need to operate the platform on behalf of the customer? And then thinking about maybe using AI to obfuscate like PII.
Exactly, essentially masking whatever it doesn't need to have. Excellent. Okay, so let's take a look on how WAF is here to help. So what can the well-architected framework do for you here? Because we talked about it before. It's not about presenting a checklist. It's just more about giving you the considerations, right? Highlighting the risks, the mitigations. So if you're that cloud architect on your journey to improve OpEx with AI, what are some of the risks and trade-offs to discuss first? What do you need to put at the top of your list?
So I think, again, the typical things are like, if you think about WAF as you described, right? It's a very good checklist to make sure you, especially in the operational excellence, you check all the boxes, right? So now if we think about how AI can enrich WAF or how you can leverage AI as part of WAF, I think the first mitigations and trade-offs you need to think about is like, okay, where do I need to use AI or where do I want to use AI, right? Because there are certain things that don't work. And there's a lot of, it's not like turnkey, there's a lot of work needed, right? Because even at the simplest level, right, what we see customers do is, I mean, they experiment what's the right model for my agent, right? And so in regards to the WAF framework, I think using AI makes WAF a living thing. So it's more dynamic. It's not a static checklist. So that's part one. You can also have like, okay, I answered this, I've done that. What's the next best action? But you need to figure out what kind of tools you use and what the boundaries are of those tools. And that goes typically into like best practices of agentic systems.
Obviously. So as we move to the closeout, let's take a look at these key takeaways from the discussion, right? We had several interesting things come to light. So obviously AI brings many super interesting opportunities with WAF. We had a few discussions. There's many more that are on the website. Number two, the tools are great to improve your operation, but you do need to carefully take the risks and the trade-offs into account. And all of these risks should be clearly understood and mitigated where applicable.
Yes. I think that summarizes it well. The way I would also, what I would add is when it comes to how to evaluate this stuff, it's just how you would evaluate any type of AI system. So if you're building intelligent apps, right, you also have inner loop testing of your agents, right? Is this the right output I want? Does it the right thing? Does it do the right thing? I think that's what you should think about when you leverage AI as part of WAF. But
absolutely,
it's a great addition. I feel it's adding a lot of value and it's making the WAF practitioner, so to say, really more productive if you think about, right? You save a lot of time in producing papers, analysis.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, Boris.
You're very welcome.